Hello, hello. Hope everybody's doing good, and thanks for showing up. I had a call from Matt earlier saying, "Hey, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think we need to get on the horn and get everybody aware of it." So him and Juan were talking. Just so Matt is Juan's chief of staff. So the things that you just know what you know. Anyways, Matt's here with us. I'm gonna bring him on. Hey, brother.
Warren, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Couldn't be any better. Couldn't be any better.
Yeah, thanks for accommodating and doing this today. Talking to Juan earlier earlier today about what you're seeing in Southern California, just a pattern of events. He wanted to come on and have a discussion with our audience, the American people writ large, on maybe a conversation that needs to be entered into for the safety of Donald Trump, the safety of the U.S. government writ large, and the safety of the American people.
Amen. I hope while he's here, he tells us how is it that houses can burn from the inside out, and like you said earlier backstage, how houses can burn. I mean, how businesses can burn from the inside out. How let's see, we were talking about it earlier. How houses can get destroyed, but trees have no signs of fire or even heat damage. How it seems like it's skipping over blue things and on and on and on and all this stuff. It's amazing to watch.
And Martin, you see from the Tustin Police Department, Humvee, so that were stolen, 3 Humvees, machine gun mounts, machine gun tripods, binoculars, medical supplies, and you see other reports of surveillance and reconnoitering being done on Army Reserve centers there in Southern California. I'm a big fan of what Bannon says. There are no conspiracy theories, but there are no coincidences either. When things begin to not make sense, you need to ask why and just look into things and not just take them at face value. And I think we've learned in our country, certainly over the last 4 years, not to take sadly, not to take what the government at any level tells you face value, because oftentimes we found that they have been disingenuous.
Amen. I've been watching a lot of stuff on this, and they have supposedly Armenian and Asian and Iranian men of that descent walking around with torches and other ways to set fires, and the authorities are saying there's no probable cause to keep them and things like that. And it's like, well, hello. Kind of crazy, kind of like them sending who was it, Oregon and Washington and Nevada, y'all's guys, sent fire trucks, emergency equipment, and they didn't send them to the fire. They sent them to San Francisco supposedly, and said, no, you've got to go through EPA and make sure your tires are up to speed and your paint's okay, I guess.
And it's again, I think we talked backstage before we started what Bannon often says, and he has it on his mantle at his studio, where there are no conspiracy theories, but there are no coincidences either. And residents of SoCal, and now you're seeing Hollywood folks who might be left of center, are saying, what the heck over, and that we have fires here every year. Yeah, these winds were high, but we know these occur all the time. Why were the fire hydrants not working? Why was the reservoir empty? These at the least worst, it's maybe bordering on criminal mismanagement. When you elect folks, or hopefully they're elected properly, to be put into positions of authority to manage these things, and you find, as an example, since 2014, the tax dollars that were being raised to update and make new aqueducts, not a penny went there. where'd that money go? And I would welcome the press. I don't care if a Republican or Democrat in office asking where's the money? Where did it go? Why are these things not being? I mean, I hope to God the press gets back to that. When I told you earlier, the great Lara Logan, who is a wonderful personal dear friend, has agreed to come on our show. We'll get her on, with her schedule, making journalism great again and having journalists do what the First Amendment was enshrined for them to do, to give them special protections, because you are supposed to hold people in power accountable, irrespective of party. It shouldn't even come into your thought process, your calculus. You are there to be the quality assurance check for the American people to people in power and demand answers from them.
Amen. The first thing that I talked about was those smart meters and how there's one on the front of a house, and let's say on a lot there's a house, and in the back of the lot there's a house. Well, and let's say the one in the back lot has a smart meter, and it burns up, and the one in the front that doesn't have a smart meter is just fine. Well, also, I heard that there was something to do with these smart meters in salt water. But then when you get into these things, you're like, what do you believe and what do you not believe? Kind of like the sulfate iodine that I've been talking about for the last few days, but found in pools. Now, you told me that Juan said it was in pools before.
When I had talked to him before the fires had started, actually, I think it was just after the 1 January, 2 tragedies in the country that we saw, the most egregious ones, New Orleans and Las Vegas. He was talking to folks in Southern California, and he's got relationships with Jim Caviezel and Mel Gibson and others, and they were finding this in pools. And why were they finding this in pools? Well, it's attracted to water, and one of the, I guess he can talk about this. One of the uses of that is to draw all the moisture out of the atmosphere, so it doesn't rain like it's supposed to. It doesn't have the moisture content that you want it to do. And interestingly, that was being found days before these tragedies occurred in Southern California. I mean, in the words of, I think, KTLA was saying, Los Angeles area, the greater area, is being, their words, incinerated. It is apocalyptic. I mean, I don't know what other word you use for it, Warren. It's apocalyptic.
Black swan event to me, it's a prime example of a black swan event. You could have never told me. Nobody could tell me, oh, by the way, they're going to burn down California, and they're not going to have any water, and there's going to be graphene oxide all in the fog, and it's what's going to be used for 3D imaging, so that Project Bluebeam can come on. It's just, you might as well just bring on 10 days of darkness, martial law, knowing that military is the only way. If you might as well just say, bring on the military, because it's going to take that.
And what I was going to, I know I think I talked to you again before we started. Juan will be here in a couple of minutes. He's just wrapping up some stuff. He's been on, calls all day today. Mm-hmm. This is from the Tustin Police Department, right? Where theft of military equipment, 3 Humvees, one an armored Humvee model. They got the below listed admin numbers that are painted on the hood of these things. 2 cloth door Humvee models, 8 machine gun vehicle mounts, 2 freestanding machine gun tripods, medical equipment, 40 pair of binoculars, 18 bayonets, and other reports of Army Reserve bases and centers there being surveilled and poked and probed, and holes cut in fences and so forth. And you have to wonder. It's Chris Krebs said this, I think, a week or two ago on, I don't know if he was on MSNBC or something. And of course, he's the person who told us that the 2020 election was the most secure ever, and he was in charge of CISA at the time.
Right.
And now he's sounding the alarm about China in our telecom, the CCP. Again, the Chinese people know the CCP in our telecom, the CCP in our grid. And he had a very, I think, very poignant point where he said, our leadership might not think that we're at war with the CCP, but the CCP certainly knows they're at war with us.
Amen. Amen. I mean, these sleeper cells that just happened the other day, I believe personally that that's what we've got going on, that this is just a plan, with the drones, the guy getting burned up in on the subway there. Was that New York where that happened?
Oh, the lady who got set on fire in New York.
Yeah. It keeps, and there was one before that was set on fire. It just keeps on and on. And to me, that's what I've always heard 2025 was going to be, a long time ago. I'm just talking 7 years. I told Chaz, man, it's going to look like the world is on fire. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but it's going to look like the world's on fire. And by George, that's what it looks like.
I was watching Bannon this morning. It's part of a staple that I glean so much from his insights and the people he has on. And a lot of the people he regularly had on are now going into the Trump administration. I think good in a good way, thank God. And he spent a lot of time out there. Pacific Palisades. He had property out there, Laguna Beach, Breitbart, all that stuff. And he said, God, it just seems like Old Testament. It seems biblical.
It's amazing, and all of it's kind of going down on us right here. I know North Carolina, but then when the sleeper cell, whatever you want to talk about, starts on January 1st, that's just what did January 1st that stuff kind of started rolling in. And
January 1st, and remember on our calls on Friday, early in 2024, we had General Holt, we had Victor Avila, we had Jason Jones.
Yep.
Michael Yon had been cautioning against this. Again, they would all say, no one has a crystal ball and knows exactly what's going to happen, but probabilities indicate these things. And General Flynn has been indicating that. And now I think we're seeing the results of this, of what we were having conversations with going back to, I think we had the first ones like February of 2024.
Let's see. So we've got about 10 days until the inauguration, I guess. 10 days of the inauguration.
Well, today's the 11th. That's 20. So not 9. Yeah.
9. Yeah. So, as of yesterday, that was 10, and Juan calls and says, "Hey, we need to have a talk. Let's do a breaking news story." There's a lot going on. I have to. Lots of times I have to look at it from a bunch of different ways because Q was so influential in my world. And sometimes I'm concerned about talking about Q, but hey, it is what it is. I got a lot out of it. And then Kash Patel was on our show one time at Patriot Party News, and it's been all over ABC and NBC and CNN, where I asked him about Q, and I'm like, oh Lord, I hope I didn't mess anything up, so because I had asked him a question about well, what I told him, I want to know about Q, what his thoughts were on Q. And he said, well, it's just, he was kind of down in it a little bit, and like everybody does, that's in his position. And then I said, well, hey, back in about 2017 or 18, Q told us we should be looking for this guy named Kash Patel to come out. And I didn't know who Kash Patel was at that time, but all of a sudden, Q said, you should really be listening for Kash Patel. He's going to show up and be telling the truth. And he said, well, he got something right, and I was like, well, okay. But then I see it on CNN, and they're kind of using it to dog him. And I'm like, oh Lord, I don't want that to be the case. I'd never want that to happen,
And I think I've seen him in a respectful way talk about, hey, I'm meeting here with Q, or I'm having a drink with Q, or something. And as folks who follow this seriously, I guess, or more thoroughly realize Q is not. First off, there's Q and Anons. There's not
Yeah.
QAnon, and usually hear the MSNBC crowd call it QAnons. There is no QAnon,
Right.
and Q has never been about one person. From what I had been shared with me anyway, it's a group of about 10 folks, and in the way I looked at it, it wasn't something to be said and then have you rest on your laurels because someone else is doing something. It was, hey, wake up! You're this is your country, your republic. There might be some things in play, but you have to do your part.
Yeah.
You have to get engaged. You have to act like citizens, not like subjects. Irrespective of party, you have to, again, those starts with the three words behind you. You have to embody the blood, sweat, and tears of the folks who fought for and created that document gave us.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that, hey, don't worry about it. Military is controlling this country. And when it comes to the Insurrection Act was signed. So, hey, everything's good. And I've just never thought that way. Hey, I just think that it's as much my responsibility as anybody's to be in the fight, to be educated, to help other people with their education of what's going on, and them help me, because who am I? I don't claim to know it all. And I go into talk time to Patriot Shoot all the time, and I learn something new every day from just members that are in there, and we're talking like we are now. That's what I'm all about. I want to get the word out, because we were censored so much. And by the way, anybody that is interested, join.patriotshoot.com. It's that's where we hang out. That's our form of Facebook. And then whoever, it's kind of like 24/7 Insiders Club with access to our talk time, which is what I'm always talking about. That's where I live. That's where I pretty much say anything I want to. That's where we have the state groups that I've talked about, where they're built down to the county level. Chaz has done that. So it's pretty much real time information. So if I'm sitting around, I say, oh man, something's happened. Boom, I get on talk time and I know exactly what's going on, because the mods and the members there tell us. And so, hey, join us. We'd love to have you. And we need people from America First. We've got people set up in there that are ready to work, ready to do things. Join.patriotshoot.com. We'd love to have you. And what it does is it pays for this. It's $8.99. This is how we pay for this show. This is how we pay for all the shows, because no one has to pay to get their information out. That's what we do. Nobody did it for us, so we started doing it for other people.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's interesting. I think you're going to see Juan. He just said you give him a couple minutes and he'll be here.
He's coming in right now.
Oh, perfect.
Hey guys.
Hey man. How are you?
Good. I apologize that I couldn't get off of that other situation for a minute. Something else is cooking, and I had to make sure that we had things going the right direction. Let me go to a quieter spot here. Give me just a few seconds.
Well, take your time. Just so you know, we are live. We're not in the back room or anything. We are live, just so you know.
Well, and I'm sensitive to that because we called this. I don't want people getting annoyed that we didn't get to it sooner. But
hey, Juan, I don't know how much
you've said.
We had a conversation earlier this morning. You
I'm glad
had a
to
sense
dive right
of
in
urgency
you guys want
on why this was important, and that
Go ahead.
Warren and I were talking about all the connecting the dots of what's going on in Southern California. Of course, 1 January, the stuff you were telling me about. I think you said sulfur iodine in the pools before that. So I let Warren know.
Io died. A little
sulfur
bit
iodide.
different. Yeah.
And
Go
I
ahead,
let
I'm sorry.
Warren know that you had there was a conversation you wanted to have with the audience and the nation writ large. So he said, yeah, he made it happen. And so now we are live for you to, I guess, give us some insights based on, I know what some of the things you're doing in the background there.
And take your time. We're just shooting the bull, man. We're just hanging out. Everybody's good. So you just take your time. We're talking about crazy things that are going on. We mentioned a little bit of stuff about Q. We talked about the smart meters. We talked about houses burning from the inside out, and maybe there being some Iranians or Asians that were walking around with items that would be able to start a fire, and the authorities saying, "Hey, no probable cause." So that's all we're doing, and he must have a bad connection. So
Yeah.
when he comes back in, I'll grab him up. His video wasn't showing that, you couldn't see his boots. Wouldn't see his face, but you can see his boots.
Yeah, I let him know we lost the connection. I know where he's at. Might not. There you go.
Guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I apologize. StreamYard doesn't let me screen incoming calls. It's very painful. So when a call comes in, and unfortunately my phone rings a lot, it can be painful because it somehow blocks my calls and I can't screen them out. So,
well, how about this? We'll just know that, and we don't have to worry about it. We'll just know that, and we won't have to worry about it. So it's all good, Juan.
All right. Well, so let me dive right straight in here. Here's my question. It's a question. It's not a I know it all, or you just got to do what I say, or something like that. It's a question. This whole audience needs to, I think we all have to consider where we're at, and then have kind of a national discussion within the Patriot groups, the people that voted Trump, the majority of the population, by the way, about this upcoming inauguration event. And the reason I say that is because, I think everybody here knows. They feel it in their bones. There's something coming. There's risk. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that we're in a very vulnerable moment. And my question is, and then I'll fill it out with some other details, but my question is, should in fact we go forward, should the leadership go forward with an Inauguration Day event in Washington, D.C. With President Trump and with all of the senior officials coming in to power at noon on January 20th? Now, I'm not questioning whether we should have events where we celebrate. I mean, even the balls around Washington, D.C. in disparate locations. We have great friends over at Gateway Pundit. They're going to have a great dance and ball event there. We have numerous of these. But the country is in an extreme moment. As I've said to this audience and other audiences, the fact of the matter is China attacked America back in 2020 and stole the election using operatives in various places in the world. They supervised the stealing of the election in 2020. This is a nation-state level attack. It is an act of war to interfere with the election of a nation-state. And this wasn't a minor attack. This was an all-out attack. We know this from several different directions, including the fact we have the people that did it, and we don't have to take them at their word that they stole this election. We also have the equipment. much of it with the original metadata in it, which means not a copy. In the computer world, computer people understand we have the original metadata. We have their statements, and we have people, including now people very close to Trump himself, who have vetted this information personally with the persons who did it, some in person, others over remote calls with other engineers present to walk through exactly what they did, how they did it, etc. We know with exacting precision, no guesswork, China stole the election 2020. And once Trump's back in office, in power, in the presidency, one of the things that will be addressed very early on is China's involvement in this, the consequences to America and the world because of this, and with consequences to those wittingly or unwittingly who participated in the steal of the election in 2020. Everything that's going to happen here in the near future pivots back to 2020 and all the events in between during this current administration. And they know, all of these different operatives all the way back up to China know that Trump and the people behind Trump are gunning for him. With that in mind, China has a lot to lose. And we know with events in various places that there is Chinese involvement. Some of it we have direct knowledge of. Some of it is by inference, but cumulatively at a certain point, it's obvious it's nobody else, okay? And of direct Chinese involvement in current ongoing operations against America to weaken America. And China is also using its proxies, Iran being one of them. Before the fires began in LA the other day, Iranian leadership on one of their websites posted something that the whole world would be shocked and amazed at what was about to happen, and that everybody's going to have to watch. The whole world will be changed by what's about to happen. Well, the thing that happened literally just a few hours later were the LA fires. Now, there's a couple things that we have to discuss within the fires for a moment, and I'll get back to my main concern for the country. The fires, Jennifer, my wife, and myself flew to LAX the morning that the fires happened before they started. As we were landing west to east, which is unusual, and that's because the winds were going a different direction than normal. Normally the winds come from off the water and go from west to east and inland across the country. But on this particular day, the winds were going out to sea, what we call a Santa Ana. These were warm desert winds. And so as we were landing into the wind on the right side of our aircraft as we were coming in on the tarmac at the west end of the airport is Air Force One, the small one, not the 747. And I thought, well, who in the world? Why is Biden here right now? And he'd come in earlier in the day, supposedly for a ceremony to commemorate a statue or whatever. Well, the winds were so much that they decided not to have the ceremony. It was going to be too windy. But he's conveniently there. Literally, we landed at 9:35 in the morning, and by the time we got our car and then headed north on the freeway, by 10:30, I saw the first of the smoke coming off the fire, and it was big. It was already probably a mile downrange and up at about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. And
very, blatant. I pointed out, Jeff, that's not good, especially with these winds. That could really get going. And it continued to build out, of course, through the day and night at what everybody is seeing. And we know that there have now been arrests of several groups, appears to be 5-man teams, that were starting fires. But beyond that, and this is where it starts to get much more disconcerting. Look, the night before I flew to LAX, I looked at the weather, and it was supposed to be beautiful days all week and sunny and pleasant, and Jennifer was looking forward to it. Because a lot of times I'm in meetings and she's out where she can actually enjoy it. But I saw the wind warning, and I said, oh boy, that's not good. Something's up. And we better pay attention, because something's not right. And then I didn't realize that the winds were a Santa Ana, which then it's drier air. But then there's something else that's going on. Subsequently, we've had a number of reports that came out with the videos. On the west side of the test range there, Area 51, there's material being sprayed. These long patterns, 30 miles long or so, of some type of material, which, based on other observations we have by other people on the ground, appear to at least be in the early stages silver iodide. Silver iodide is what you use to salt the clouds, to take the moisture out, to cause them to precipitate, to go from fog to rain, so you can clear off a runway or get moisture someplace. And in the contact with water, they don't dissolve. We had a number of people, once one person saw it and others went to look and saw the same thing, where pools, swimming pools, had this sheen on them, and when the material was tested, it was silver iodide, and almost looks like an oily sheen, very thin. But do you want to swim in it? Is it safe? Where'd it come from? Almost looked like a petroleum product at some level. And when they're spraying, by the way, it is a petroleum product because they put it in suspension in jet fuel, which is kerosene, so that it will disperse and the kerosene evaporates and the particulates, go into air suspension and float like dust in the air, very fine talcum powder. So when this was being sprayed on the west side of the test range out there at Area 51 and was visible by satellite, then the material was being pushed. We do this with certain types of radio frequency waves and even into the physics. And push it in certain directions where this material is at. Well, it was being pushed, it would appear, by just the Santa Ana or desert winds out to the west and to the Los Angeles basin. And when you look at the videos, and many of you have already seen them, you see this reflective material going out to California, to the LA basin, and then coming out of an aerosol suspension, dust in the air, if you will. Other frequencies are used, and it literally allows it to just fall out of the air. It's not too different if any of you have air ionizers in your house, and you want to clear the room of, say, smoke from cigarette smoke or smell or something like that, and so you turn on your air ionizer. And what happens is the dust goes straight to the walls, okay? The air's clear, but the dust goes somewhere, and there's a static electrical charge to the air, and it'll just go a certain way. Well, you can also cause it to fall straight down out of the air in certain areas, with pretty exacting precision when it's there in the wind. And that's exactly what's happening. It's falling as dust in certain areas of the LA basin. So you're pushing material that is being sprayed clearly by military aircraft. There's nobody else's aircraft operating on the west side of the test range. I can tell you that for sure. So who authorized this? Where does it make sense? And why was it happening in the days before the fire started? And by the way, what did Biden know and when did he know it? Or the people running Biden like a freaking robot? Why did they want him there ready to go as the fire started? What was his role? There's a lot more to this than I think at first glance it appears, and I think there's questions that need to be asked. Now, if this is far more coordinated as an attack, who would be behind this, and what kind of collusion would you have even into our own government to pull something like this off? It's a very, very serious conversation that will have to be had. One of the other things that we've seen now, that we've had some time, yes, on the surface, we see saboteurs starting fires. It's a team effort. Appears to be 5-man teams primarily. You always have a couple of people that want to copycat. And so there's a question, do we have a copycat component with some of these people that provide distraction and plausible denial and things like that for what these fires are doing? I think that's there. With the winds as high as they were, and I was there for it, peaking at 80 miles an hour plus, some places said they had 100 mile an hour plus where the wind was generated by the fire and amped up even further. And by the way, those winds, again, a component of what can be done in these operations is to amplify winds to push them up to higher velocities and directions like that. So was this high wind Santa Ana natural, or was it amplified somehow for somebody's purposes with these fires? The timing was incredible. And of course, when I saw that there was going to be high wind warning for the next night, my first concern is any of these people that might go out and start fires. Well, you had people doing that, but let's switch directions for a moment. In the Paradise fires in California several years ago, and I'm sorry, I've been talking all day for days at a time here. In the Paradise fires, we saw that there was other technology applied in the way those fires propagated. Most notably, with the precision where houses were burnt down, but immediately adjacent to them, trees with green leaves remained. One of the other components, car wheels made of aluminum that would require 2200 degrees just to soften the aluminum, and higher temperatures to make it actually melt and flow. But we saw vehicles where certain metal components and other things on houses and other places, metal components were melted right into the ground, yet the temperatures that you would reach in a burning environment for the materials around those locations only had a combustion temperature much lower, 1400 degrees, 1300 degrees. Yeah, it's hot. It'll singe the stuff, it'll leave black mark, but it won't melt aluminum wheels into the ground. That is other technologies that were present being applied that there's no explanation for them except that it was a militarized type weapon that was used in those areas. Let's just be blunt, and I know a lot of the audience is already up to speed on that. Same thing at Maui. Now, one of the things that happened at Maui that I think everybody needs to slow down for a second and listen to what I'm saying here. One of the interesting things was pointed out to me when I was over there was a location where they'd gone in and replaced a culvert under a road. Now, this road had several feet of dirt from the road surface that the cars drive on down to a culvert pipe location. And the culvert pipe was a tin, metal, steel pipe. It had melted in that location, and the road was threatening to collapse above it. So they pulled the pipe out and put in a plastic pipe that was quite large to fix that situation with the road. A very heavy-duty, thick plastic pipe. Why? Because, first off, that metal pipe had no reason to have melted. There was no combustibles around it. The ground wasn't burning. The asphalt wasn't burning. But yet the metal culvert under the road down in the ground was burnt, melted. That's not a normal fire. That's what we see with a microwave laser weapon, a beam weapon, a energy weapon. Okay, this is militarized technology, a DEW weapon, directed energy weapon at different wavelengths for different purposes to take out targets at a distance. That's something that's nation state level and had to come from above. Whatever height, we can do it in drones, we can do it aircraft, we can do it from satellites. And so can a number of other countries. We see that type of melting all over in Lahaina, and that defies being a natural fire occurrence. We're seeing the same things in Los Angeles. And we see also the signatures of those same types of energy devices in some of the overheads where it appears very clearly that the fire starters that may be on the ground, humans trying to start a fire, are being augmented by satellite-based weapons, most likely, almost assuredly, assisting with some type of beam weapon usage to make sure that all these neighborhoods are burned down with precision. Another aspect of this is things that have a blue tone to them within a certain range of the blue don't seem to be affected by these, by the wavelengths of these microwave laser weapons. So we see blue trash cans beside other colors of trash cans, and the blue ones are just fine. The other ones in the area are all melted and burned. We see not very many blue roofed houses, but there is a few, and they're not burned like other houses in the area. So a pattern is emerging, and there's something, in order to use something like this on U.S. soil, you would have to have some level of collusion. Look, we see this stuff. We got all sorts of detection systems. In fact, the people that are in the civilian world are using satellite platforms, observation locations, to document these energy weapons in use and these ignition points on the fires, and correlate what appears to be humans versus some type of militarized weapon being used. My premise within this audience is, knowing that the fight has reached a level where nation-state level militarized weapons are in play, and all the dangers taking place. And I have something else to add, but I just want to go back to the beginning. Does it make sense for us to put in this chess game on 5 levels the king, this incoming head of state, in a position of risk out in the open with all the supporters, all of the key cabinet people like that at the inaugural event? This is a moment where you could have an enemy that it appears we're already engaged with for their own reasons. They could do what we would call a decapitation event and take out all of the leadership that we just got voted into authority and power. Does it make sense to risk everything that we have in play right now in this fight?
Hey, Juan.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, as you're relaying this to us, I know, help coordinate. You recently met with a retired general who I think the audience would know who that is. I won't divulge that, but who I've said, and I heard others now say they would prefer that Trump were sworn in on the ground floor of Cheyenne Mountain, where we know he's amongst friendlies.
Well, it doesn't have to be there, but within that complex system, there's about 100 locations that would work. And at the very least, it's not just about Trump. You have a number of the people that will be taking leadership positions as our government comes, full circle now in this boomerang flip return. That if the inauguration event goes forward as designed right now, they are out in the open and they're exposed to a number of threats, not just one. And so I want the two articles, if I didn't send them to you already for this specific thing, I want those printed. They're aimed at a military audience, so it might take a little bit of thinking, dissecting as most people go through it, but we have a large military audience here as it is. And it's not exclusively to that type of audience. You can figure it out pretty simply. It's just that some of the terms and abbreviations fit that environment. But the short version is there is concern that we have one or more nuclear devices, most likely of origin from Ukraine and Belarus, to follow the Soviet Union. Back in the period before '94, when an agreement was reached to send those back to Russia and dismantle them, disarm them. Some had gone into play before that. This paper references '94, but actually there was concern about those weapons before this. And some of the weapons had multiple independent vehicles, MIRVs, return vehicles, that you might send over, 6 weapons in a missile, 8 weapons in a missile, and then they can independently break off and steer to the target under propulsion instead of coasting like the early missiles were designed to do, and hit multiple targets, multiple independent warheads. That one of those missiles and multiple of the reentry vehicles may have got loose somewhere. There's other stuff with a broken arrow here in the United States where there's still questions. Did both devices get recovered or only one? And then there's other stuff going back quite a bit further into the 50s when we were disarming some Davy Crockett's, and a question about those. So, and then also dirty materials, which were alleged to be what's being looked for, which could have come from reactor stuff, primarily out of Ukraine, but possibly also out of Japan. So with all these different things, there's real people who do this for a living, look at and do risk assessments from a military perspective. The 2 articles that I asked you to post somewhere for people to peruse when we're done with this broadcast talk about that. They're not saying that exactly what they've said precisely is what's going to happen or has happened, but it's what appears to be going on, and then a most likely scenario how would you use one of these weapons in a perfect world? And by the way, it's not to attack the inauguration with, say, a nuke or something like that. There's other better uses for that for different reasons. But there may be other things in play where you could attack this inauguration and the period after that, going to the White House. They're out in the open, wide open. And with the drones in play, we have a lot of really incredible systems out there. And of course, think of all of the rockets that were fired at Israel out of Lebanon. Think of the 200 missiles that were fired out of Iran into Israel recently. And by the way, technology, not just the Iron Dome that you hear about all the time, other technology was in fact in play and used to take out those missiles. We have some really great stuff. But just like that bullet got within a half an inch of Trump's noggin, his skull, even though it pierced the ear, had his skull just been a little bit further over, had he not turned his head that little extra bit with a hand of God angelic, twist, if it had hit anywhere in the skull, it very well could have disabled him where he couldn't even be functional right now. Didn't have to kill him. And we would have an entirely different world right this second. You can only imagine what our situation as patriots, voters, everything else would be like had Trump not survived that attempted assassination and the one that followed. Well, if you'd asked anybody, oh, the system's perfect, these guys are so good, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true, and they've upgraded, changed, done all sorts of things. But even with all of that, it appears, and I think we're not being wild in what we're talking about here. Look, to most people within the political realm, to even question that you would have the inauguration on time, out in the open, at that exact location where it's scheduled, is sacrilege. I can tell you, I could pick up the phone and call a number of people in the political world that are names that you know, and every one of them would say that's the most stupid, dumbass thing in the world. We're moving forward. We're America. We stick our chest out. We're not bowing to anybody. We're not going to whatever, okay? No, we're having the inauguration. We're supposed to be on time. That's the way it is. We're not screwing this up. But if we're at war, if we're in a battlefield environment, remember at the first Revolutionary War, and I think we're in another one because it's in some places it's the same crowd that we're fighting still. But in the Revolutionary War, the Brits were a little annoyed with the Americans. Why was that from the outset? Because they'd hide behind trees. The Brits would run around in ranks out in the open. They expected us to come out and fight like men, stand up in a row like dominoes, and then have a fuselage of bullets going at each other, and then see who had more guys to lose. And our guys weren't going to play that game. They'd go hide behind a log and fire at will. Well, that's not manly. That's not gentlemanly. Why, those stupid Americans don't even know how to fight a war right. Well, we're not playing those games. Does it make sense? And this is my question. And other people, look, welcome to challenge me. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is stupid. Of course, we're having the inauguration as advertised on time. Everybody's already planning stuff. They're all going to be there. My contention is that Trump, for the sake of the nation, with all the energy, Matt, you know how much work and money and time and life we've all put into this to election this time around, and where we got an outcome that was actually the will of the people and not something stolen and concocted. And by the way, this whole time, Matt, this whole time, Warren, this whole time, everybody listening right now, we now know, and it will be absolutely, undeniably, totally clear to any reasonable person over the next many, many months that, in fact, the attack on our election system was administered by China.
And Juan, when you say China, I mean, you're saying certainly the CCP, correct?
That's correct. And their leadership, they were widely in the loop on what was going on. This wasn't just a rogue group within Chinese intelligence. We have the communications. We have people in their organizations who have given us the insight on the communications all the way to the top, as well as Cuba, as well as Venezuela, and other groups around the world. And by the way, and I haven't even told any of the inner circle here because I don't want it to get out till the right time, but when you find out the return side of how a lot of this data was brought back into the U.S. voting system, a bunch of chips are going to fall into place, puzzle pieces, and you're going to go, oh, shit, that's why that person had to be there. That's what they were setting up all this time. No wonder Trump did certain things during his first term to block that out and try to stop it, and other agencies came in and did this. When you hear how it came back in large measure, the data, the stuff going out was one pipeline, the stuff coming back in followed a different pipeline. It's going to really piss people off. But
Hey, Juan, also in the
yeah, go ahead.
The discussion we were having this morning, I know you've been in conversations with several different folks, and if I could just couch it and make sure I'm articulating it correctly, why you're bringing this up and other folks are having this discussion that you're talking about on the public grandiosity of the inauguration, as we normally would always do, it's one, for the protection of Trump. We fought so hard for him to be elected again as the president, his government that's going to be in there, and not having that get decapitated, God forbid, but also knowing his love and adoration, Trump's, for the American people.
Yes. Look, it's not just that we have a concern for the welfare of the leadership because we're putting all of our chips in one basket at that moment in a soft spot location. Well, D.C. has got all sorts of weapons and protections and everything else. Yeah, some of this can be protected against. Some of it might not be as easily protected than some people might think. I don't want the arrogance that we, just because nobody's ever tried something else, some other weapon before, and it would be really mean and nasty if they did, then again, that you can have something used that we never anticipated precisely or thought would have a chance is a possibility. And remember, even if you have a decapitating moment, but it takes days, weeks, or even months before somebody would succumb to the damage, whatever was put there, you're not functioning at full steam, and some of those people aren't functioning at full steam. That's not acceptable either. And then we do not use our citizens for shielding. We don't put the innocent in harm's way. And at this moment, I don't think it's unreasonable.
You know, Juan, and just real quickly, that was, remember when Trump got shot in Butler, his first question was anybody hurt? He didn't care about himself. He was anybody hurt?
Yep, that's right.
That's what concerns me about the rally. You know, he's talking about this rally on the 19th, as Oath Keeper Bill said in the comments. I haven't understood that.
Well, let me just, yeah, look, I within normal political circles, my ears are ringing. I know what I'm saying here is sacrilege, and that the first knee-jerk reaction of most all the players, including around Trump, is no, we're not doing that. We need the optics, and the optics are important, and we're not going to be threatened into that way on such an important role. Well, I actually think that Trump has already intoned that this is not situation normal. The other day, Trump was asked in an interview, how long will it take you to get up to speed with your new administration and get all the stuff working and people in the right places so that you can begin to, go after your policies and all that. Now, a normal answer would be, 60, 90, 120 days. You might say a week just to be a smart ass. But, you got appointments. They got to be, agreed upon by the legislature, Senate. There's a process to get people into place. And then even once they get there, sometimes you have to have the aides and everybody else, explain who's on the roster, what they do, why it's important. It takes a bit to get your sea legs, even if you've practiced for it and prepared. But Trump gave a snarky answer that, if you actually understand how all this works, was like, are you kidding me? Come on, man. He said 2 hours. Yeah, I think 2 hours. We should be fully operational in about 2 hours. Why is that important? Because on Inauguration Day at noon, January 20th, every year, except when they used to do it back in March 4th, 100 years ago, noon, January 20th, Trump is going to be sworn in, barring any other insanity. When that happens, then he has to walk to the White House. They got to get the keys. There's all the formality. Oh, where's the keys to the car? Where's the keys to the helicopter? Where's the flight logs for Air Force One? I want to fly it myself. Whatever. We have a little song and dance, and it's a national thing to peacefully transition power. But Trump, and then you go to the ball, the banquet. You celebrate with all the people that got you there. It's this winning moment. Thank you. And everybody gets to savor the moment, and then the next day, on the 21st, you get to work. And it takes time for everybody to kind of get, where do I park? Who's working with me? What am I supposed to do? I don't like the color of the wall and the desk. And get it all kind of in a flow. We're not in normal times. When Trump said 2 hours, he was intoning to me, from my perspective, that this will not be a normal inauguration process. And in fact, nothing about what's about to happen is normal in this flip, reversal, Esther moment. It's going to be something nobody really saw coming, unless you key in what I'm saying. The stuff in California, the way you have to interpret that, my opinion, we are under attack. The attack hasn't subsided. It's continuing. It may even be increasing with other tools coming into play. Fertilizer bomb systems have been found. They've been cordoned off, haven't been torn apart yet because there's not time and they're too dangerous. We've got these teams that we've apprehended some. There's probably many, many, many more available. And it's augmented by, it appears, space-based laser weapons and weapon systems that have been turned on our own people from U.S.-based facilities. Now, remember, when Trump came into power, ran for the presidency before he even took the office, Trump has since said the reason why he ran. He ran because he was invited to run, and he accepted the invitation, the request. Who invited him to run? He's told you. Most people haven't heard it. They weren't paying attention, didn't understand what they heard. 200 generals. What? 200 generals invited you to run? Not all of them? Or why would that even matter? What's going on? Are they current generals, past generals? What's going on there? There is a problem within the U.S. military. And some of that problem may not be active against America, but they may not be paying attention well enough. Back at Pearl Harbor, there was a certain demeanor which was described as a type of complacency. Marshall described it as dead wood within the general staff and senior officers. And so once the attack on America happened at Pearl Harbor, he came in, did the heavy lifting to clear out all the guys that weren't ready to go to war, that were not really in a wartime mode. They were just feathering their nest for retirement and rank and retirement pay. And their attitude, their demeanor, their presentation put us at risk and allowed Pearl Harbor to happen. I don't want another Pearl Harbor, but this time couched within the event of an inauguration.
Yeah, I mean, he purged the officer corps there in the Army leadership, Juan.
And if he hadn't, how would we have proceeded in that wartime environment? My contention to everybody here listening is we need to be real. We are, or at least it appears, and a reasonable man would not be wrong to question, are we already at war and don't realize it yet? Have we already been attacked and didn't recognize the vector because it wasn't done in a conventional way?
Hey, Juan, Chris Krebs, infamously of the 2020 election, it was the most secure in the nation's history. He was the head of CISA. He said several weeks ago that when he talked about the CCP in our telecoms, the CCP in our grid, he said, we in our leadership might not think we're at war with the CCP, but the CCP knows they're at war with us.
And that's exactly right. In fact, again, they know what they did in attacking the U.S. election system back in 2020. They know. And they know that if the American people figure this out en masse, the American people are suddenly going to be a very dangerous tiger. And they are then at risk because they need the American people asleep and not paying attention. Even greater risk for us, though, is if our leaders, our watchmen on the wall, are asleep at the wheel and aren't aware of the fact that we are, in fact, being attacked, not just invaded, but those that have invaded in some ways are now attacking us, including somebody got control of the helm. Look, when you get into the realms of operations, let's just use Area 51, you only have to get to a couple of people in compartmentalized areas that we want you to do this at this time. Okay. Your job is to do this at this time with your stuff. Okay. They don't see the big picture with compartmentalization. You don't need a couple people know what they want to do. And you could pull off an operation where people didn't even know what it was doing, how it was going. You could tell them it was to protect America, and protect that area, and it's doing something completely different. Look, just give you a mental picture of how things can go awry. We had a B-52 take off in Minot, North Dakota, with a full load of nuclear bombs without any of the proper authorities. It was mistake or something that allowed those bombs to be loaded many years ago, about 20 years ago, and then flown halfway across the country before anybody caught it, and then literally send up fighter escort aircraft to escort that aircraft, which the crew was like, what in the world is this about, supposedly? And when it landed at the location that we sent it to, did not have a full load. And it was explained away as though, no, it never got loaded all the way. Well, you don't half load that kind of an aircraft. That's not the way it is. So, and it didn't have a full load when it landed. Where'd the extra stuff go? You've got stuff missing out of Russia, and the satellites there, even the Russians. Let me just add this: Krylov, the general in Russia, who was in charge of monitoring nuclear materials and weapons of mass destruction, personal friend of Putin's, not just a general where he's on the list, call that guy whatever. No, personal, close friend, longtime associate of Putin. That's why Putin trusted him in this exact area. He's the guy that was mapping the 54 biolabs in Ukraine where they were preparing biological weapons to be used against Slavic people, Russians, in eastern Ukraine. This is the guy that identified those bases, and at the beginning of the war there in Ukraine, had teams that went into those locations, grabbed samples and records, and then disabled those labs that, by the way, were funded and put in there with CIA supervision and Western intelligence agency supervision. Why in Ukraine? And by the way, that Hunter Biden sat on the board of that company. Krylov was the guy that was supposed to be watching, monitoring, and protecting where weapons of mass destruction might be used. The understanding, and remember, we have, even in this difficult moment with Russia, we have players within that system that are trying to communicate to the West certain things with players they think would be interested to know information and might be able to get it to right ears. When Krylov was assassinated a month ago, Krylov was in the midst of an investigation tracking and trying to locate and probably seeding with an investigation materials to locate a nuclear device or devices that were somewhere in the Ukraine / Western spy rings. Interpret that as CIA, MI5, MI6, Mossad, something. And what the issue is this: if you have a nuclear device, certain components of that device have a shelf life, and they have to be serviced regularly. Some components have to be serviced every couple of years. Some components can go up to a decade or more. But beyond that, and remember, this is stuff from the late 80s, early 90s, there wasn't servicing being done past the early 90s. If you had one of these devices and you wanted to make it operable again with any reliability, so you didn't have a fizzle or nothing at all, you would have to upgrade it. And most likely, because of there's idiosyncrasies within all sorts of the calculations and materials and everything else, you're not doing this with some high schooler out of the garage or even a college student. Even an industrial expert from somewhere in industry wouldn't necessarily have the right components. The best, most likely place to get the components you need with the types of materials you need is going to be somewhere in the Russian system. And Kurylov, as a general within their weapons of mass destruction operations, was trying to track down the flow of materials that appeared to be going for one or more devices. And by the way, one a gun type device and one an implosion device at a bare ass minimum, possibly more, with the materials needed to bring them back up to full operation. Why? How did they get onto that? Who knows? Who tipped them that something was in play, or did they get some new information, informant, whatever? Who knows? But that's what he was looking at. If something like that was in play, where would it be played? Would everything come to the West? Would it go to Ukraine? How would it be used? Would it be used tag team, one thing causing another thing? An excuse for something. Look, within this audience, I'm asking you to think kind of the unthinkable of sum of all fears level. With the two papers that we have there, and remember, this is done by somebody that does this for a living within a military environment, trying to assess if somebody had this weapon, and with the information we have at this moment in time, within this window of it being used, what would be the most likely potential targets? And he's narrowed it down to what he believes are the most likely targets. And by the way, the nukes are not for the inauguration or nuke. One appears to be in play in Russia, would maybe be aimed at Putin. One appears to be in play here in the U.S. and would be utilized, but you have multiple weapons of mass destruction potentially. And what would be used in D.C. to decapitate the incoming administration and all of the players, or at least damage in such a way that they cannot go full steam in 2 hours of being sworn in. Okay? What could be in play? There's actually quite a few things. And if you think you know all the answers, then you're an idiot. There's 1,000 ways this could be done. Get off your high horse and understand the risk. And this is not a normal moment. This isn't business as usual. If we are under attack, as I have described to you, you must apply a different calculus to what is appropriate at this moment in time. And number one, we do not want to risk citizenry. We don't use our citizens as protective shields. Two, the location is out in the open. It's not in a building you can even secure. Three, you have already shown that there appears to be at least some complicity of players in the system who should be on our side but have a political bent and even fear of Trump's return. How are you going to deal with that? Does it really require, is it wise? A wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way. This is not just another election. We need to be wise and savvy enough and weigh the consequences. If we're wrong, what would happen? What would America look like if for any reason a number of the leaders there weren't able to function or were no longer viable? How long would you recover? How would you recover? Where would you start? With so much at stake, I think it's a reasonable
question, and I'm asking this audience and other audiences to consider that we need to give permission, have the conversation, and it would be my opinion that we should have the inauguration in a more secure location. We can all watch it on video. In fact, let me just say this, guys. If you were to change the mechanism for the swearing-in ceremony, right now crap is like the 16th moon landing, okay? Nobody's paying attention. You know, a couple people will tune in later. Yeah, I saw him put his hand on the Bible, say something, blah, 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 done. You do it in a secure environment. You do it and change up the way that you're doing it. You would have possibly the most viewed televised event in world history because everybody would know. You send a message, this is not business as usual. And the stakes are that high right now. And it's been proven. Look, the situation over in California, if California was a country, it would be the 10th largest economy in the world.
Right.
Things that happen in California affect the whole world. The largest county in America is Los Angeles County. And it's been attacked in this way. To get back on its feet is going to be really a big deal. In fact, the numbers that are being passed around right now are not true numbers. The fires aren't done. By the time we get this under control, the numbers that I had just earlier today that were projected, something around $2 trillion to get Southern California operational. That does not include lost revenue, because people saying you'll have it put back together in 2 years. No, you won't. You won't even be done with the cleanup in 5 years.
Hey, Juan, also just, you know, you're with, I know you're talking to other folks about the 20th. You know, if you look backwards, I think I've got the dates approximately correct. 1907 was a conflagration in the LA area that close to this size of one, if not a little bit less, maybe this might be the worst. And it's so rattled, it was so economic devastation, it rattled the markets. And I think JP Morgan had to step in to help settle the US capital markets. And it was a necessary, though insufficient, prerequisite to create the Fed.
Well, in fact, when you look at that event, and again, you have to think in terms of some of the monsters that we're facing. The spirit of Nero lives today. These globalistas that want to reinvent the world, like Nero, they need to burn everything down as much as possible and then reinvent those places to fit their image, their ideals, their ways, what they want to do. And the memory of all those that came before to be gone. And so they are mad. These globalists with their 15-minute cities and a lowered population for the planet, they have a plan and they're working it. And if you don't know it, just like you said with the CCP, we may have all sorts of leadership in America that think these are our friends and it's all happy and we're going to work together. I remember the old Twilight Zone episode where a guy finds an alien, and this alien's very, nice and, trying to help and on. And the man finds a book that the alien had, that the alien didn't know he was reading, sleeping's out of the room, whatever at the time. So he sneaks a peek at this book, and it says on the cover, "To serve man." And the alien's talking all nice and everything else. So the man figures, oh, they're here to save us. They're here to save us. It's so wonderful. I'm so thankful. And I'm going to help him with everything. Everything he wants, I'm going to go get it and get it ready to go. And so the man's got it all ready for the alien.
and then the alien's going to capture him and opens the cookbook the rest of the way. It's not to serve man, to help man. It's to serve man as a meal. It's a cookbook. These people that are supposedly working with us, all our friends, etc., out of China right now, are not our friends. And these globalista who have a plan for their 15-minute cities and their World Economic Forum and Council of Foreign Relations and everything else, even to their own members, may look a certain way. But when you take what they're doing and take it all the way out to the end, they want depopulation, they want to reinvent the world, and they want their management style, their way, and enslave everybody else, or else they're gone. And so this is a existential moment. If you don't get this, it might just be too bad, because you won't be around it won't make any difference. You'll be gone. Your children will have to deal with it, or your grandchildren, if they survive to be somebody else's slave. So again, I go back to, at this moment with so much at stake, so much in play, should we give permission? Should we collectively say, too much at stake, too many unknowns? Yeah, I'm good. We'll all have a block party. We'll all celebrate. I'll invite the neighbors over. We'll have a dance. We'll have a ball. Continue those there in DC. Yeah, they'll be fine. Just don't put the leadership in one place, and this one time we'll do it different, because there's a
We lost you. Juan, I don't know if you can hear us, but we lost you. But I'm going to have Chad. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Why? Go ahead.
I'm going to have Chaz, we're going to put this in patriotshoot.com and, really have some discussions on it, maybe get him to do where we can vote on it and things like that, which it all sounds like such common sense. And when Matt told me, on the Friday call about, hey, this is going on, I was like, I told him, I said, I'll be looking at weather. I'll be looking at what's going on in the world. And I use my mother's intuition. I actually call her and say, hey, how do you feel about this? If I don't quite have it. And I'll tell you what, my common sense said, heads up, everybody. This is the real thing, the real deal.
This is not a normal election or inauguration, etc. I don't want to take a chance. In chess, you always protect the king, and you don't put him in danger. You don't take a chance. Here, with so much at stake at this exact moment, I wouldn't give anybody, foreign or domestic, even the opportunity. I'd err on the side of caution. Let's all take a breath. I get the pomp and circumstance. I get the optics. I get everything. But honestly, let's take a breath and not put that into play and take the risk there. And I think if it's presented correctly, if the American people are in broad agreement, it'll be a more natural, and by the way, I don't think you can wait till the night before or even the 19th. I think to be reasonable and appropriate, that decision, go or no go, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, okay? If the people that are in the right spot believe we should just go ahead and go, and they can protect everything, and there's no problem, and all the people will be just fine that show up, okay, I step back and defer to the powers that be. But if you're going to make an announcement one way or the other, we're going or we're not going, and stop the chatter, we could very well, within the next day or two, get chided and told to shut up, and what in the world are you talking about? There's no way we're doing it, from very authoritative sources. And I'm sorry I ruffled any feathers. I'll say it in advance. I'm sorry. I go,
But
okay.
Juan, as you and others who have been discussing, just wanted to have a conversation. Not that the folks are giving their permission, but saying we understand this is not normal time, and if you think that's best to do that, those protecting Trump and our government, we understand, and it's okay with us.
Yeah, but if not, I think either way, honestly, I think it's appropriate before people spend hard-earned money they can't really afford to lose in some cases to make that go, no-go decision by the 17th, sometime on the 17th. That way, we're conserving energy for other stuff other times. Look, I'm the one that wants a block party for us in October 2026, and we're going to have one hell of a block party, and we're not going to be afraid of anybody, and we'll spread it out all over the place. We're going to have a blast, okay? But this isn't just a normal thing when we haven't even got people back in play. We don't have full control and authorities over a number of the agencies. There's too much that doesn't look right, feel right. You know, there haven't been proper answers even on this drone activity, let alone stuff that's being sprayed. Look, it's not just the stuff that we already know about and is in those papers. There's another component to the spraying which other groups have already identified, and it's parasitic in nature. It's bacteria and parasites that attack the brain and the heart. Most parasites, it's the lungs that are the most fragile, and in fact, we have that with influenza going on all over the country. That's probably not what most people think with the bird flu stuff. It's actually parasitic in the lungs. And by the way that you respond to that is you change your biome. The way that your bacteria consume and attack things. And so in the old days, pre-refrigerators, if you will, that was done with ferments, fermented foods, pickles, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, I can't think of the other one right now, but kombucha, things like that, okay? And that helped to create an environment where certain types of bacteria and especially parasites couldn't function and live. And it is aided by things like ivermectin and stuff like that. But there's something in some of the materials that we've seen that is actually literally parasites. And so, and also that can get into the animals and like that. So we've got a full board of caution lights and red lights. Let's talk about it and have a national discussion, and then if it's go, great, I shut up. But if it's not, let's say so soon enough that people keep their powder dry and hang tight as far as that. And then let's do look, I think, we do our events that are very spread out, not easy to target in mass. We're not all in one place, and there's no decapitation angle to it as we do this fight back. We don't even know what the next 9 days really looks like anyway, but we already can see it portends to be far more serious and other feet to drop. So let's keep our powder dry and save it for another day at this exact moment.
Hey Juan, just to give you a quick update on folks that good people that are in our government that are doing the right things, just to give an essay to you and the audience. just some updates here. Fires popping up all over San Bernardino County now in multiple different locations. An FBI assistant director on a conference meeting this morning had his lapel American flag pin upside down. We know what that means. He kept referring to, we need more assistance, and tugging on his left pocket under the lapel pin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Look, I don't, how much more direct do you have to be? I'm trying to be as direct as possible. Let's have the conversation. And nobody's un-American if they're saying, okay, you know what? This is, something's not normal. This is not a normal situation. Let's pause and get it right.
You know, Juan, and
much to lose.
as you know this, and your background, and just from mine, and I merely rented a time in your world. That wasn't my profession, but in the profession of aviation, that we had a great saying, and it served well. And folks who ignored it sometimes paid a terrible price. And it was, if there's doubt, there's no doubt.
There you go, bro. I had something years ago where, and I wasn't aware of it as the pilot. There was something that happened, and somebody made a decision. No, that'll be fine. We've never had that problem before. No problem. In its own lane, I would say similar to what happened on the space shuttle. Bougielet was an engineer. When ice crystals on the Challenger shuttle engines, he screamed bloody murder everywhere that they would listen, inside Morton Thiokol, over to NASA, everything, that they couldn't do this launch. And the reason is because on prior launches that were done below a certain temperature, they'd seen that the O-rings were not elastic enough to seal up gases in these solid rocket boosters, and you could get a leak, and that could cause a catastrophic explosion. So everywhere he could say it, he said, no, you cannot go. All you had to do, and Chuck Yeager, the first man to go supersonic, Chuck Yeager was the one that did the demonstration. He had a glass of ice water, on the table in front of him as they were doing this investigation, hearing. And he had one of these, something that was made out of this O-ring material that was in the Challenger's solid rocket boosters. So while they're listening to everybody and listening to their explanations and stuff, at a certain point, he pulled that O-ring out of the glass, and he folded it over, and it cracked. It broke in half. Well, it's a rubber O-ring. If it was warm, and he had a warm one that just been sitting on the table all the time, he could squish it over. It was just fine. But when it got down below freezing, just a couple of degrees, it got so brittle you could break it. And with all the vibration, with all the energy, and all the jostling that occurs in that vehicle that's lifting off, to get a crack or a break or a separation in an O-ring, very, very simple. So Bougielet made all the warnings, yet nobody wanted to listen, because that was the State of the Union address that Reagan was going to give. And they wanted that so bad that they just had to do it. And he was overruled. Nobody listened to him. And as he watched the launch, he knew when the burn would reach a certain point in those solid rocket boosters, it was like a time bomb. And sure enough, as the solid fuel burnt and reached that level inside the booster rockets, he put his hands over his eyes, what bullets, and there it was, blew apart. Everything he knew he was afraid of, that he warned everybody. And of course, they had the hearings, the testimony, didn't bring anybody back. Let's not take a chance. It doesn't make sense right now. Let's take a deep breath. And by the way, if President Trump is in a secure location, being sworn in, we can all join in. It'll be the most televised show on planet Earth. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. And he can be fully engaged in business where we are under attack right now. And in 2 hours, we're making moves to stifle, stop, interrupt, and take back the reins of control, the ship of state, from these pirates who've stolen control of America and countries all across the world, 72 total, had their elections hijacked by these pirates. And we need to take back the helm of the ship, steer away from the rocks, and help other of our friends to do the same. Where it looks like they've lost their mind too, and it's just pirates running the ship who are completely insane. It's not worth it. Let's go fix it.
Amen. Amen. So it's very reasonable to me. You know, I'll love to get in here tonight on in Talk Time and in Patriot Shoot and get people's reaction and things, and then we can, you know, hear from what everybody's thoughts are. I love people being able to get involved like that. So hey, go to join.patriotshoot.com. We're gonna I'm sure Matt, you can just send me those, and Matt, we need to get you in there. I'd love for you to get in there and see the rooms that we're doing, the down to the county level, so you know we can get people informed. That's what we need to do, and I think that's what Juan is bringing to the table. Hey, you know, let's get everybody involved, and let's put it out there. You know, put the truth out. You know,
let have a discussion. It's like, again, my from my background, when you're a staff officer for a commanding officer or a commanding general, it's incumbent upon you to raise your concern. Not that the leader is going to always side with you, but as we've seen Trump do this a lot, he wants to see multiple different perspectives and opinions. Give him the unvarnished best information you can from you or your organization, and let him decide. Right, Juan?
Well, let me throw something in here too. Even for the people around 47, there was a Korean airline passenger jet flying into San Francisco several years ago, about a decade ago. And as the captain was bringing the aircraft around on approach, his glide angle was low, and the co-pilot pointed it out, and the pilot didn't make any adjustments. And the co-pilot, because he was a junior officer, he deferred to the captain's judgment, and he didn't say anything more. And the reason is because in that culture, if you speak up, you're out of your place. You're not supposed to challenge that kind of authority, even to question it. And so he did initially make a notation of it, was ignored, and he didn't say anything more. And the aircraft came in low, came in short, and it, you know, destroyed the aircraft, of course. And then there was a girl that got out, and unfortunately they'd foamed everything, and they didn't see her under the foam, and a fire truck ran over her. Very, very sad. I don't think anybody else in the aircraft died, but the cause of that crash was that the junior officer failed to protest and do his job, even though he wasn't in command of the aircraft. When he saw clear danger where things were outside of normal parameters, it was his job to speak up. Any other crew from other places, the junior officer would have been very adamant, sir, pull up, we're low, we're this and that, because there's so many things going on in a large aircraft like that, that's why you have a second set of eyes there, and to second guess to make sure you got a couple of different brains. If the second guy isn't speaking up, you're depriving yourself, and if you're not listening, you're being deprived of that extra judgment that'll keep you out of trouble. So we may not be in command of this situation, yet this is our ship of state, and we have a responsibility. Don't run it on the rocks. Speak up. Danger, 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 Will Robinson. There's something wrong here, and be in some kind of agreement as a class. You know what? If in doubt, let's not do it. Let's do it a different way. And in fact, it can be way better and way more appropriate. And by the way, do we need the parties that night by him? The rest of us can go party, have a normal day, and be thrilled and all that. But he may need to hit the ground running, and the people around him, because we're an extremist. Something isn't right. Not just with the events and the fires like that, but also people that are involved in stuff. We don't have a full knowledge what's going on with these drones. Well, even if you do at a certain level, who's in charge of that? Do you need to address that before it gets any worse minutes after you're in office, when you have the authority? Do you have to address other stuff with things that are going on in bases around the country? If it's going on at Area 51, I guarantee it's going on in other places. We better stop it. And by the way, if you've got, there's a couple other things. Look at what's going on with the drone wars on the Mexican side of the border between the different cartels. You realize these cartels are carrying munitions and blowing each other up using drones. They have drone operators that are capable of doing that. And instead of going out and sending an assassin, a sniper, somebody with a machete, some friend of a friend, they're doing it with drones. They're blasting each other to smithereens. That capability can be used other places and will be. So do we just sit back? I think day one, within minutes of taking office, we need to be on the road. And if it takes 2 hours, sorry about it, I had an incoming call, but that makes sense, guys?
Yes, very much. Very much. All of it's making sense. We all know.
And I don't know what your comments might be. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go ahead. I was saying everything's making sense that you're saying. And yes, getting involved this is what I wanted, getting people involved. This is exactly what we're looking for. Getting the right information from the right people, being able to vet it real time. That's what we're all about. So yeah, it all makes sense to me, Juan. And it's what my comment is telling me.
You guys have a fantastic audience, and within that audience, I don't know if you're seeing the comments or questions that people are asking, but I mean, is there some consensus developing here? What your audience thinks? Am I having an appropriate conversation with fellow citizens, or have I just gone off the deep end?
100% guarantee. Here's Oathkeeper Bill. 100% guarantee. Juan, you are definitely using your brain. Thank you. Yes, I agree. I haven't seen anybody that's saying anything other than pretty much agreeing with what you got to say. And this is something that we'll talk about all night. We'll talk about this all night. That's what we do on Saturday nights. We sit in there and talk about this stuff. So in talk time. So yeah, this is great.
And your audience, guys, what's interesting about PPN, and this is why I'm so thankful that you brought Matt in and are utilizing him like you are.
you're an audience that influences many other audiences. The fact that you're here on a Saturday night, the people in this audience are here. These people are in other audiences, other places.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking questions. They're making statements. My belief is that whereas you might have friends, family members, co-workers that up until recently thought you were off your rocker, treated you, poorly, didn't want to be too close to you in the room, guilt by association.
Right.
You are headed towards a different role. In this
We are headed towards a different role.
Warren, he probably gets when I
100 calls a day.
he gets like 5 or 6 calls a minute.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, in this boomerang moment, and it's only on StreamYard that I, for the most part. So, in this boomerang moment, though, you're moving from being the tail to the head. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
to opt accordingly. Don't, just because you might have been the recipient of a few smirks and sneers, deep breath, let the water run off you like the back of a duck. Your role in our nation at the street level is changing. It's not about to change, it's already changing. And things that you say, things that the conspiracy theory is now conspiracy facts. So now you gotta go find some new theories. Or maybe we've already exhausted most of those. We don't have time for theories because we're too preoccupied with the facts. This is one of those things now where you're the ones, when we say Patriots in control, you're the ones that actually can control the narrative. You're beyond being controlled by manipulative people, by manipulative propaganda. And you're the brains in the room. Operate accordingly, deep breaths, paced, but you, this audience, you folks, you need to be out there and be influencing. And just as I propose it as a question, I don't want to be a know-it-all. I don't want you guys to be a know-it-all. We're asking other people to do the calculation, do the mental calculus. Does it make sense with the stuff we see, and like the articles that I asked you to post there, Matt, does it make sense right now to proceed as though we're in a normal situation or not? I don't think it does.
Me too. Feel the same way.
Yeah, I agree. And as we wrap up, I know we're getting close to 2 hours here, and I know you probably got other phone calls. Just somebody had sent me this during the day, and I think it's appropriate. It's 2 Corinthians 3:17, which states, "Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." And I think that's quite apropos.
Amen. Amen.
Yep.
Amen.
Well, let me just say a quick prayer with everybody.
Great.
We need divine oversight guidance here on this. Father God, we try to plan and do things. We try to exercise the wisdom that we have by your grace. But we know that there's things that are beyond our understanding and our control. We lift this matter up to you and ask you to work in the hearts and minds of all involved, make sound choices on behalf of this people, this nation, and for other nations that are looking to us for guidance and leadership at this critical moment, that you would give favor to those who would influence the president and him, those around him, in the correct direction concerning how we
do the actual ceremony as we transfer power than Trump in this current moment. We ask for your protection as a people and the nation, and your guidance and protection in this war that we're in right now, and that you would reveal yourself in the midst of all of this on behalf of your people and this nation. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Juan. We always appreciate your input. I happen to agree with what you said there. I'm going to go and spend the evening talking about this stuff. We appreciate you coming on and giving us your wisdom, brother. And appreciate the fine prayer.
Well, and I we had talked about this over the last several weeks, even the last several days, some of us behind the scenes. I kind of decided that I just had to, we need to have a broader conversation. It's the only appropriate thing. And this isn't a one-man decision, and I would tell you, I don't think it's even a one-man decision all the way to Trump. At the end of the day, he will make the decision, but there needs to be some understanding, and then we come to some kind of consensus, even out to the citizenry, that helps to guide the decisions that are finally made. And I believe we will get the right decision. Work through it to come to the right decision.
Amen. Hey, thank you so much. They're fixing to cut us off, so appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Thank you for the information, and you know that I'm ready whenever information needs to be put out. I'll have patriotshoot.com ready. We'll be posting everything in there, and thank you so much, Juan.
All right. Good night, folks. Good night. And by the way, I am going to do something special. You'll see it over in Jennifer Mack's site to meet a few folks. You're in the right position where you can come out and do it. Unfortunately, it's a little bit in there. She's got some fun stuff for folks that I think people are going to enjoy, because we're going on with life. We're going to have a lot of fun. And and she has some neat stuff, the Megador stuff and like that, with the coins and like that over at her site. Take advantage of it. We gotta, part of this is that we don't let people, the bad guys, if you will, the black hats, spook and intimidate us. We're gonna have fun, but we do it in mass, and we don't stick out. Why? Because we're all in the same lane. Okay, let's have some fun. Love
what's
all
that
you
website?
Folks.
What's that website before you go? Hey, Juan, before you go, what's that website?
Yeah.
What's that?
JenniferMack.com.
Okay.
JenniferMack.com. And she's got so many cool things. She's got something over there. We got a couple really neat things coming out. She wanted an unveiling party for a piece of art she's done that I don't even know precisely what it is. I kind of know the zone, but she's really looking forward to doing this big reveal. And so we're having some fun. And so she's got something there on the site. And, take a look. If it's something that fits where you're at, great. And there you go.
Hey, Warren, I know
me and Matt
as
like
we
to
wrap
help
up, and as we go, so folks will realize this helps Juan, so many people. He funds and helps so many people to get things done, and this will also help in that effort for that block party he talked about in October 2026.
Amen.
Yeah, it's gonna be